U.S. Congress urged to pressure Nigerian government to declare Sharia law unconstitutional, disband Hisban commissions. At a joint briefing of the United States Congress, witnesses and lawmakers rejected arguments that killings in Nigeria stem from resource disputes. During a joint House briefing in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's October directive and designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, Council on Foreign Relations Senior Fellow Dr. Ebenezer Obadair testified that the primary drivers of violence, Boko Haram, Islamic State West Africa Province, ISWAP, and radicalized Fulani militants, exploit Sharia frameworks and Hisban officials to impose extremist ideology, enforce forced conversions, and operate with near-total impunity. Obadair laid out a strategy for dealing with the violence and killings. A statement by the House Appropriations Committee quoted him as saying, "The policy goal should be twofold. First, work with the Nigerian military to neutralize Boko Haram. Second, the United States should put pressure on President Tinubu to 1. Make Sharia law unconstitutional in the 12 northern states where they has been adopted since 2002, disband the various Hisban groups across northern states seeking to enforce and impose Islamic law on all citizens regardless of their religious identity. As recent events have shown, the Nigerian authorities are not impervious to incentives," he said. Since the country of particular concern, CPC, designation and President Trump's threat of unilateral military action against Boko Haram, President Tinubu has made several moves, including ordering airstrikes against Boko Haram targets, the recruitment of an additional 30,000 policemen, and, most recently, declaring a national security emergency in the country. He, however, expects a lot more to be done, saying, Washington must keep up the pressure. The bipartisan session, led by Appropriations Vice Chair Mario Diaz-Balart, Republican Florida, and involving the House Foreign Affairs Committee, heard repeated accusations that the Nigerian government is complicit in what lawmakers called religious cleansing across the North and Middle Belt. Witnesses cited the November 22 abduction of children and teachers from St. Mary's Catholic School in Papiri, Niger State, what they described as ongoing blasphemy law imprisonments, and mass killings, rejecting claims that the violence stems solely from resource disputes. Obadair emphasized the roots of the crisis, saying, "The deadliest and most serious threat confronting the Nigerian state today is jihadist terror, perpetrated by the Islamist group Boko Haram." Boko Haram translates to "Western education is forbidden." Boko Haram's barbarous and implacable campaign to overthrow the Nigerian state and establish an Islamic caliphate in its stead is the source of Nigeria's present discontents. Every proposal to solve the Nigerian crisis that does not take seriously the need to radically degrade and ultimately eliminate Boko Haram as a fighting force is a non-starter. Forcing accountability. Representative Chris Smith, Republican New Jersey, labeled Nigeria ground zero for global anti-Christian persecution, while Representative Brian Mast, Republican Florida, demanded the disarmament of militias and prosecution of attackers. U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom Chair Vicky Hartzler and Alliance Defending Freedom International's Sean Nelson detailed recent atrocities and called for Washington to use security aid leverage, early warning systems, and targeted sanctions to force accountability. Lawmakers from both parties signaled support for Diaz-Balart's FY26 appropriations language addressing the crisis. They announced that the Appropriations Committee is drafting a formal report to President Trump with concrete recommendations, including potential conditions on U.S. assistance to Nigeria. The briefing underscored the Trump administration's recent redesignation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern. It reflected growing congressional consensus that reversing Sharia criminal law in the North and dismantling Hisban forces are essential steps to halt one of the world's deadliest campaigns against religious minorities. Trump first designated Nigeria as a CPC in 2020, but it was removed from the list by his successor, President Joe Biden. However, the U.S. President, on October 31, redesignated Nigeria as a CPC over religious freedom violations. He thereafter threatened military action in Nigeria if the federal government did not address the challenge. Trump said the U.S. may halt aid and assistance to Nigeria if nothing is done to stop the alleged Christian persecution. Follow us for more updates. Thank you.